Okay, this is kind of a special thing for me. It's not often that you get to go to the podium and induct a true childhood hero. And that's exactly what this driver was to me. And he's actually a big reason as to why I got involved with the sport. A lot of guys like this driver, another gentleman that's here, Bob Potter, some of the guys that were part of my childhood at the Waterford Speedball. Uncasville, Connecticut's George Hewitt came to motorized competition via the two-wheel route. Prior to his debut in the world of stock car racing, he'd celebrated multiple championships as a member of the Indian motorcycle team during the 1950s and early 60s. A lot of people don't know that about Moose. He was an extraordinary motorcycle racer and a champion, as said earlier here. Says by that first ever four-wheel victory in the Bomber Division at Connecticut's Newland and Waterford Speedball on Saturday evening, June 18th, 1966, he was quite accustomed to winning on a racetrack. It would only improve for the man nicknamed Moose. I never knew why Moose was nicknamed Moose. This was a powerful guy. He excelled at athletics before getting into motorcycle racing. I mean, he was just a true all-around athlete. By the 1968 season, Hewitt was firmly established as a top competitor in the Speedball's headlining modified division, and he started winning. His first modified victory occurred in 1968, with many more to follow. By the dawn of the 1970s, he was no longer a regular at Waterford. I still remember that because, you know, it made me feel so bad because Moose wasn't going to be running at Waterford. But he had began successfully competing weekly in the NASCAR Modifieds at Stafford Springs Motor Speedway. Other raceways, such as Thompson, and also the big away events, such as Martinsville, Trenton, and Pocono, were also part of Hewitt's busy agenda. And I should also note that Moose did very well at the larger tracks like Trenton, Pocono, etc. And in fact, I've got it in my records, he was actually top qualifier at a lot of these events. And he was really, you know, they were small teams. He was driving for people like Freddie Doolittle. He was running his own cars. And they were really, to be a top qualifier at one of those events was really something when it was a smaller team like Moose's. Hewitt experienced success at Stafford during what many New England modified racing aficionados considered to be that track's true golden era of NASCAR modified racing. He recorded multiple feature victories at Stafford between 1970 and 1975. Of particular note on that list of triumphs is a stunning and well-received underdog victory in the big Winston 100 on Memorial Day weekend in 1975 against an absolutely star-studded field of some of the best modified racers in the country. Some of the guys that are here today, as a matter of fact. Returning to the Speedball for a residency in 1977 proved to be wildly successful for Moose. He was a veteran by that time. Between 1977 and 1984, he recorded 5 modified championships, tying for the then record with New England Auto Racing Hall of Famer and Speedball icon Don Collins. During that period, he recorded an impressive 13 feature victories, boosting his all-time Speedball modified record, and this includes the SKs in the early days, to an incredible total of wins. I mean, it was well over 30 wins. And this is another important aspect about Moose Hewitt. It should also be noted that Hewitt always relied on cars of his own design and construction to carry him to victory lane. This includes the years in which store-bought chassis had become the norm rather than the exception. This guy built some absolutely beautiful equipment, and the stuff he designed was just incredible. He was a great fabricator. He had a great team behind him, and it was all built in his shop in Uncasville, Connecticut. I mean, these cars competed at Martinsville sometimes against, again, teams that were much better financed. Unfortunately, Moose passed prior to the start of the 1997 season, quite unexpectedly. It was a regret for me because by that time, I'd got involved with PR at Waterford, and I never really even got a chance to interview him. I remember him as a kid. I met him several times, and like I say, he was one of my favorite drivers. And today he goes into the Hall of Fame. Could we get Moose's family up here, please?
We are so proud and honored for this to have happened. My father would have been ecstatic to be here. In the company of Cup champions and winners, and Jackie, he loved you. And you know, he used to go seek you out down in Florida whenever he could. But my family's here, my mother Jane, my sister Sandy, and my other sister Tammy. And a lot of our family time was at the races. And back in the day, before kids had iPods and electronic devices, can you imagine suffering a rainout for my mother with 3 kids in the back of a station wagon? We're just truly honored, and my father would have, he would have been so pleased. He was someone who did it his way all the time, and in fact, the last hours of his life he had spent working on his race car. He was getting ready to, it was in February, and that was his plan. He came home for dinner and he died, and my mother found him. But he was hardcore. When he suffered from aorta. Thank you. Aorta heart disease, and several years before he died, it was at Christmas time, he had a pig's valve put in, and he was back in his race car at the Spring Sizzler. That's, you know, he was just driven to race. And we're just so happy. There's so many great drivers and personalities that have come before him in the near Hall of Fame, and we're just so pleased that you've honored him with this. And there's so many great people that haven't been honored yet, so we are truly, truly honored. Thank you very much.
And the Hewitt family accepting for George Moose Hewitt